Good afternoon. Uh, I think I am audible.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sorry, we became late today, much late than expected because of some problem on my side, on this side, and there was a power cut which led to this. Today, I plan to complete this half wave dipole so that we can proceed to other antennas, arrays, etc. So we'll complete this one. So this is the final lecture on half wave dipole. The outline includes what is a half wave dipole that we have discussed. Again, we'll discuss that. How to calculate its fields, and then how to find out radiation vector for calculating field. Then what is the radiation vector in an alternative method. So two ways of calculating radiation vector I will discuss today. Then we'll find out expressions for the fields. Then we'll go to a radiation pattern, then radiated power. Then we'll see input impedance, directivity, etc., which are the characteristics. Then we'll see that there is a reactive part in the input impedance. Reason for that reactive part, that also we'll see. Then we'll see a code. Today I plan to describe the code, a MATLAB code for normalized gain, then this normalizing constant, and the solid angle, beam solid angle. Then we'll see the surface current distribution on the dipole simulated part. Now onward, I will see the simulation and we'll discuss the simulations. Then we'll do an analysis of the impedance based on the simulation. Then we'll do an analysis of the pattern based on the simulation. So this is what I plan to do today. Just a second, I think somebody is trying to enter. No. Okay. So let me start with half wave dipole. By half wave dipole, what I mean is, or what we mean, always we mean in the antenna community, not in the physics community. In physics community, if you say half wave dipole, they will laugh at you because dipole in physics is defined as two charges separated by infinitesimal distance. Therefore, when you say half wave, they will laugh at you because the distance is halfway between the two poles of the charges. So in physics, they don't call it a half wave dipole, but in antenna field, we call it a half wave dipole because it behaves like a dipole, as if two poles are at two ends of a conductor and the length of the conductor is half wave. Each side of the conductor is lambda by 4. So total is lambda by 2. Lambda by 4 plus lambda by 4 is lambda by 2. So that is why we call it a half wave dipole. This corresponds to total length of lambda by 2 or k into L. K is the wave vector or wave number into L. K is 2 pi by lambda. L is lambda by 2. Therefore, 2 pi by lambda into lambda by 2 will give you pi. So, KL is equal to pi. If KL is equal to pi or L is equal to lambda by 2, remember L is the total length. If the total length is lambda by 2 or KL is equal to pi, we call this a half wave dipole antenna. This is the most common antenna in the antenna community. So, any book you see, you will find out the half wave dipole and analysis of half wave dipole. The current distribution along the antenna is cosine. So Iz is equal to I cos kz. Right? This you will find out in most of your textbooks. But I find it convenient to write it in the form Iz is equal to I sin k whole into L upon 2 minus mod of G. This is how I define the current distribution for a linear antenna when we consider standing waves. So that is same thing that I am continuing here. Only difference is here I will take KL is equal to pi. Therefore, KL by 2 will be pi by 2. So sin pi by 2 minus G mod. So you know sin pi by 2 minus theta is equal to cos theta. So same thing. Whether you write the upper one or the lower one, it is same thing. Depending on which book you are following, you can take one of these. I will prefer the upper one, or I rewrite the lower one as the upper one, and I will do the analysis accordingly. Now, once we know the current distribution, then our aim is to find out the field. So, how to find out the field? What is the method of calculating field? This we have seen already in our discussion earlier, that electric field E will be 1 upon j omega epsilon mu whole into curl of A. This is valid in source field region. Where there is no source, this electric field expression is valid. And we are considering it in the far field or in the observation point. There is no source because we are at a far away distance from the source. So it is a source free region. There we will find out E using this equation. Once we know E, in the E we are using a vector potential A. This vector potential we have already seen is given as AR is equal to 1 upon 4 pi integration of mu j r dash E j k capital R upon capital R dq little r dash. Now, how we know R dash represents the location of the charge or current. So, source location is R dash. So, it is integrated over the source and the field is found out at a distance point R. So, this is how we find out AR. Remember that this is valid for a time varying current. So, we are taking AR, not ART. We are considering it for a time harmonic current. AR is given by this. Now, when we are calculating AR, we see that there is a capital R in the numerator and in the denominator of the integrand. Then we have already seen what we will do with this capital R in the numerator and in the denominator. For the numerator, capital R will be R minus R cap dot R dash. For the denominator, capital R will be approximately equal to little r. We have seen why this is possible and the justification for this. This we have already discussed, so I am not going into it. But once we make these approximations for R, or we replace this capital R in AR, then our AR becomes AR is equal to mu, which is a constant, that is why it is taken outside, integration e to the power minus jk little r, because we are not integrating over little r, we are integrating over little r dash. So little r is taken outside, divided by 4 pi little r, because we are taking capital R as little r and we are not integrating over little r. So that part is non-integrable or non-integral. Then integrand part becomes volume integration of j r dash e to the power j k dot r dash dq r dash. All these r dash are little r. So this is an expression for AR. Now once we see that, then we immediately recognize that the volume integral can be represented as a separate vector, and that vector we call the radiation vector. Like AR, we call it the radiation vector potential, this new AR with the approximation for capital R, this AR we call it as the uh, radiation vector potential, because this AR is valid only in the far field region. In the far field region, these approximations for capital R are valid, because in that case the variation is 1 upon R. If we are in the near field region, then these approximations will not be valid, because we cannot neglect R square and R cube terms. So these are for the far field or for the radiation field. So we call AR to be radiation vector potential, Fk to be radiation vector. Right now, Fk depends on theta and phi. So we can find out, or we can rewrite Fk as F theta phi. So using that, we write our radiation vector potential AR to be equal to mu exponential minus jk r upon 4 pi r F theta phi. So this is how we will find out AR, or radiation vector potential. Once we know radiation vector potential, then we can find out the curl of the radiation vector potential. That also you have seen that we simplify that curl expression as curl of A is equal to minus jk cross product A plus higher order terms of 1 by R square. So those higher order terms are neglected. Therefore, curl of A is approximately equal to minus jk cross A. Why we are calculating curl of A? We have seen in the first line, E depends on curl of A. Curl of A. So curl operation is actually in this form in the far field. It becomes, curl operation becomes minus jk cross. So that can operate on anything. So accordingly, our electric field will become E is equal to minus jk eta exponential minus jkr upon 4 pi r into r cap cross F cross r cap, where eta is the free space impedance or intrinsic impedance. Its value is equal to 125, which is approximately equal to 377 ohms. Once we find out E, then we can find out H easily. So H is equal to minus jk exponential minus jkr upon 4 pi r into r cap cross F. What we are doing here is, instead of curl A, we are writing minus jk cross. And thus, using that, we get these values. Then if you compare E and H, we can find out there is a difference of eta. So E is eta times H cross r cap. So there is a definite relationship between E and eta, and in terms of magnitude, E is eta times more than magnitude of H. So this is how we have to find out on the fields. So let me find out the radiation vector for a half wave dipole antenna. So what I will do is, I will start with Fz, because my antenna is oriented along Z axis. So A is equal to G cap Az. So if A is equal to G cap Az, F comes from A. So F will have only the G component. So my problem now becomes Fg theta, to find out Fg theta as the radiation vector. So Fg theta is I e to the power jk z dash cos theta dg dash. So for I we can write current distribution, or I or J is the current distribution. For current distribution we are writing I sin k whole into L by 2 minus g dash mod or g dash absolute. It that is for current distribution. Rest of the thing remains as it is. Exponent term dg dash. And now how to evaluate this? This is a difficult integral. So we will use the integral table. From the integral table, we can find integration of sine a plus bx into exponential cx is equal to exponential cx upon b square plus c square whole into c sine a plus bx minus b cos a plus bx plus a constant, which is the integration constant. Using this, fg becomes 2I upon k cos kh cos theta minus cos kh upon sine square theta. These derivations we have done in the last class. Now what we are going to do now is, here my h is equal to minus lambda by 4, lambda by 4. H is equal to lambda by 4. So let me put h is equal to lambda by 4. If I put h is equal to lambda by 4, kh is equal to 2 pi by lambda, k is equal to 2 pi by lambda, then cos kh becomes 0, kh becomes 2 pi by lambda into lambda by 4. So lambda numerator and denominator cancels out. 2 in the numerator, 4 in the denominator. That gives you pi by 2. So this becomes, fz becomes 2I upon k cos pi by 2 cos theta upon sine square theta. So this is, if you have understood the last class, this is very easy. Just remember what is the expression for fz. Using this formula for integration for sine, we can get this. Now let me find out this in an alternative method. Now for the alternative method, what I will do is, I will write simply same thing. If the theta is equal to minus h to h, in that case, z dash is equal to minus h is equal to minus lambda by 4. So lower limit is z dash is equal to minus lambda by 4. Upper limit is z dash is equal to lambda by 4. We are integrating it over z dash. Then I sine k L by 2 minus absolute of z dash e to the exponential j k z dash cos theta dz dash. Now that I can write again as for the integral part, I is constant, so let me keep out I outside. I will multiply I later. So what is left is integration z dash is equal to minus lambda by 4 to z dash is equal to lambda by 4 sine of pi by 2, because k L by 2. Now for L we are putting lambda by 4. Once we do that, this becomes pi by 2. So sine pi by 2 plus kg dash, because we are using mod of g dash, so that we can replace as plus kg dash e to the power j kg dash cos theta dg dash. Now we'll use the same thing, same formula that we used in the previous case for the integration from the integral table. So using the same formula, we get exponential j kg dash cos theta, which is e to the power cx. Here c is j k cos theta, that is c. A is pi by 2, b is k. So we are using those things. So using that, we will get this value. In the denominator, we will get k square plus jk cos theta square whole into, then you will get c is jk cos theta, then sine pi by 2 plus kg dash. Then minus b is equal to k. So minus k cos of pi by 2 plus kg dash. Limit is minus lambda by 4 to lambda by 4. So that I will again expand. Now you know sine pi by 2 plus k lambda by 4. When I put that upper limit, L is lambda by 4, so k lambda by 4. K into lambda by 4 is how much? K is 2 pi by lambda, so 2 pi by lambda into lambda by 4. That is pi by 2. So sine of pi by 2 plus pi by 2, that gives you sine pi, which is equal to 0. So the first term will go out. Similarly, when I put the lower limit, it is sine pi by 2 minus pi by 2, because k lambda by 4 is pi by 2. So sine pi by 2 minus pi by 2, that is again 0. Sine 0 is equal to 0. So this term will also go. So these two terms are 0. Then we are left with what? E to the power j pi by 2 cos theta divided by k square sine square theta into k plus e to the power minus j pi by 2 cos theta divided by k square sine square theta into k. Right? And so in the numerator there is a k, in the denominator there is a k square in both the terms. Therefore, in both the terms, denominator becomes k, sine square theta is common. So in the denominator we will take sine square theta common, k remains common. So then now I bring in I. So Fg will be 2I upon k into cos pi by 2 cos theta divided by sine square theta. This is simple. You are using Euler's formula. So using Euler's formula, we get this Euler's formula for a complex number. As you know, e to the power j theta is equal to cos theta plus j sin theta. So from that you can find out what is cos, what is the addition of these two. So that gives us this. So ultimately we find out the radiation vector using either of the alternatives to be equal to 2I upon k cos pi by 2 cos theta divided by sine square theta. So this is the radiation vector. Once we know the radiation vector, we are going to find out the field expression. What will the field expression? We have already seen the radiation vector has only theta component. So E and H will have only theta component. E will have a definitely theta component. So E is equal to theta cap E theta. So that will be theta cap jk eta e to the power minus jkr upon 4 pi r fg theta sin theta. This we have already seen in the last class. Similarly, for the H vector, it is phi a component because E and H are orthogonal to each other. We have seen this derivation of these field quantities as E is equal to theta cap E theta and H is equal to phi cap H phi. For H phi, we have found out the expressions already. So this will be, H will be equal to phi cap jk e to the power minus jkr upon 4 pi r fg theta sin theta. Fg theta we have just found out in the previous slide. So now if we look at this the E field pattern, then we can see that when theta is equal to pi by 2, then there will be a maxima, right? So maxima occurs for pi by 2. Again, look at the normalization constant Cn. Cn will be equal to 1 because of the coefficients associated with the f, the theta and phi variation, whatever is the coefficient, and those coefficients will give rise to Cn is equal to 1. So normalization constant Cn is equal to 1. You can simply find it. Then we can find also that the intersection of 3 dB or half power circle with the gain in the pattern that occurs at angles or at an angle, total angle is theta 3 dB or half power beam width is equal to 50.96 degrees. How we will find out this later also, but this is what it is. the half power beam angle, beam width is equal to 50.96 degree, whereas this is 90 degree for a Hertzian dipole. So the moment we come to a half wave dipole, this is smaller, which means this becomes more directive. The larger on the angle half HPBW, the less directive. So on each side, the 3 dB angle occurs at 50.96 degree. Therefore, half power beam width is 180 minus 2 times theta 3 dB, which is 78.08 degree, which is narrower than the Hertzian dipole. For Hertzian dipole, it is 90 degree. Now, on the right hand side, you see the radiation pattern for the half wave dipole antenna. The upper one shows you the absolute gain, whereas the lower one shows you the gain in dB. So in the upper one you can see 0.5. In the lower one you can see 0, minus 3 dB, minus 6, minus 9, etc. So this is the difference between the absolute gain and the gain in dB. The absolute gain actually looks slightly narrower than the gain in dB, but both are in both the cases the angle is same. Half power beam width is same in both the cases. So don't get confused if you see this. Why I am showing this is when you are going to plot this, either you will plot in absolute gain or you will plot in dB. Some people might have plotted it in dB. Some people might have plotted it in absolute gain. When you compare them, they will not look alike, but both are same so long as they are giving you a figure of 8 figure. Right? And so this is about the radiation pattern for the half wave dipole antenna. Now you can find out what is the intensity U theta, that is defined as, we have defined it in so many times till now, as 1/2 r square E theta absolute square upon eta. And now that we can write, we know what is the value of E theta, so we put that. Now this gives us 1/2 eta I square divided by 2 pi whole square, then cos square pi by 2 cos theta divided by sin square theta. This is the radiation intensity. Now once we find out radiation intensity, we can find out what is the radiated power. It is integration over 0 to pi over 0 to 2 pi double integration surface integration U theta sin theta d theta d phi. So now if I keep on integrating this, only I will integrate over theta. When I integrate over phi, we get 2 pi, so we'll take that 2 pi outside and all other terms outside except the theta terms. The theta terms will constitute the integrand. So now in the integrand, now for d theta into sin theta in the numerator is there. In the denominator we have got a sin square theta. So in the integrand now we get a sin theta in the denominator. This also we had discussed in the last class. Now this integration we cannot do analytically, or there is no closed form expression, exact expression for this type of integrand. So if we are going to integrate this, we require to use a computer code or a numerical method. So if I use a numerical method, leave out the first term. First term is half 2 pi. For eta I will put 125, then 2 pi whole square, then I square. Integration will give me 1.2188. This can be different. It will be approximately 1.21 depending on what is your error tolerance and what is the method that you are using for numerical integration, you will get terms which are approximately 1.2 or which are close to 1.2 and varying around 1.2. So different methods in different books, you will get different values. Here I am taking 1.2188. I will tell you why, because I have got a program that I will show you. So from that you will see why this becomes this. Now if I use the value of pi, first I will cancel out pi. In the numerator I have got pi square, in the denominator I have got pi square. So cancel out pi. In the numerator we have got a 2, in the denominator also we have got a 2. So cancel those 2. Then we have 120 by 2, that is 60. 60 into 1.2188, that gives me approximately 36.5640. That into I square. So my P rad now becomes 36.5640 I square. Now remember this value for P rad. Maybe I will use it later. So then we are going to find out what will the input impedance, what will be the directivity, etc. We start again with Iz, which is the current distribution in the form of sine, not in the form of cosine. Start it in the form of sine. So we write the first line on the left side. So that is my expression for Iz, or the current distribution along the dipole antenna. Now remember this, sin KL by 2 in this case will be equal to 1. That implies sin square KH is equal to 1. So that implies sin square KH is equal to 1. Similarly, sin KL will be equal to 0, which implies cos KL will be equal to -1. Why KL is equal to pi? So sin pi is equal to 0, cos pi is equal to -1. So remember these values. Give me a break for 2 minutes. Now let us start. In the last class, we have seen an expression for input impedance or radiation resistance, that we also call radiation resistance. Rin is equal to R peak upon sin square KH. Now we have just seen that sin square KH is equal to 1, because sin KH is equal to 1, sin square KH is equal to 1. So if you do that, use that value, then for a half wave dipole antenna, Rin is equal to R peak. We know the expression for R peak. R peak is equal to eta upon 2 pi integration 0 to pi cos KH cos theta minus cos KH whole square divided by sin theta d theta. This is R peak. Now, and we have seen how to evaluate this. When we take cos KH, KH is equal to pi by 2, so cos KH is equal to 0 in this. So cos pi by 2 cos theta whole square by sin theta. So now my Rin, which is equal to R peak, will be equal to eta upon 2 pi integration 0 to pi cos square pi by 2 cos theta divided by sin theta d theta. Using numerical integration, this will give me 73.0790 ohm, which will be approximately equal to 73 ohms. This is the input impedance. Roughly, we can say this is the input impedance, but more accurately, this we call the radiation resistance. So, radiation resistance or input resistance is equal to 73 ohms. It is not appropriate to call it input resistance. The reason will be clear shortly. In the next slide, I'll give you the reason. So, Rin is equal to 73 ohm. This also you can find out using the expression that we have found out for P rad. For P rad, we have found out an expression which is equal to 36 point some value into I square, and we know P rad is equal to half R rad into I square. So R rad is equal to 2 P rad by I square. So 2 P rad will be again around 73 ohm. Right? 2 P rad by I square will be again 73 ohm. So either you find out Rin from that expression or you find out Rin from this expression. Both way we will find out Rin to be 73 ohms. Now if it is 73 ohm, then the advantage is it is easier to match this value to the characteristics impedance of the feed line. When we are using coaxial cables, for the coaxial cables, the characteristics impedance is around 75 ohms. Right? Although for most of the devices, the output impedance is about 50 ohms. So the cable, for the cable, the characteristics impedance is around 75 ohms. Therefore, when we use the connector at the ends of the cables, we take care so that the 75 ohm is transformed to 50 ohm. So that is one of the functions of the connectors that we connect to the cable, because device, their output or input impedances are 50 ohms, but usually cable has 75 ohms. So directly we can connect a cable to a half wave dipole antenna. This is much easier than using a connector, etc. SMA connector, etc. that we cannot use. That is difficult to find. That is costly. So straight away use a cable. If you can use it in the antenna, just connect it, solder it to the antenna. Now we can find out the Dmax. Once we know what is R peak, we can find out what is the Dmax. So Dmax will be eta upon pi into R peak. So this is an expression that we can use to find out what is Dmax. Eta is equal to 120 pi. So you can write Dmax is equal to 120 upon R peak. Find out the R peak value. We have seen what is the R peak value ever in the above. So put that R peak value, we can find out what is Dmax. So let me calculate Dmax once more. Now Dmax also we can find out using this expression, 4 pi Umax by P rad. Right? And this is also another way of finding out Dmax. So either you use the previous formula or you use this formula to find out Dmax. We have found out what will be Umax because we have found out what will be U. So from that you can find out what is Umax, and we have found out what is the expression for P rad. Put those values. So Dmax will be 4 pi divided by 8 pi square eta into I square. Right? So eta into I square. So that will give me that eta into I square whole into 1 upon 36.5650 I square. From where this 36.5650 comes, I square comes, that is from the period. Period is equal to 36.5650 approximately 36.5650. Again, I am saying it is approximately, not exactly, because it comes from an integration. Integration is done by numerical methods. All numerical methods have some amount of error associated with it. So there is an error in this also. So P rad is equal to 36.5650 I square. Then we have got 4 pi remains as it is. U max is equal to eta I square by 8 pi square. So now we cancel out I square in the numerator, cancel out pi in the numerator, leaving out only pi in the denominator. Then for eta put 120 pi. So pi cancels out, numerator denominator pi cancels out. So what we get is 4 into 120 pi divided by 8 into 36.5650. That is equal to 1.64. Therefore, the directivity for dipole is equal to 1.64. If I compare that with an isotropic source, then it will be, when you compare power or anything with, then we usually use dB. So since here I am comparing it with isotropic source, I'll take its log value times 10. So D dipole will be 1.64, that will be equal to 2.15 dBi. I indicates that the comparison is with respect to an isotropic dipole which is fed with the same power as the half wave dipole. So if I feed power 1 watt to half wave dipole, and if I feed power 1 watt to isotropic dipole and compare their directivity, then I will get this value. Directivity will be 2.15 dBi. For a dipole, instead of comparing this with this isotropic dipole, if you are going to compare directivity of other antennas with dipole, then we are going, in this case, it will be comparison of directivity of the dipole with itself. So if I take their ratio, it is 1.64 divided by 1.64. Dipole with itself, dipole value is 1.64. So 1.64 divided by 1.64 is 1. Log of 1 is equal to 0. Therefore, dipole gives you 0 dBd. Small d indicates that the comparison is with respect to a half wave dipole. I hope there is no confusion here. Now you find out R rad, as I told you, 2p rad by I square. Again, that will be around 73.1280, 73.1, something like that. Now we came up to this very easily using our previous analysis, etc. Now comes the trick, or now comes the catch of dipole antenna. Let me take a 5-minute break, if you allow me, then I can discuss. And there is certain problems that we'll see. Actually, Z dipole will be equal to, approximately equal to 73 plus J 42.5 ohms, approximately equal to this value. Why this occurs, I will tell you in the next slide, but this will be like this, which means it is no more resistive, pure resistive dipole. The half wave dipole input impedance is not pure resistive. So this is one approximation. Then we are leaving out something. What we are leaving out is the fact that the dipole that we are using or constructing is made up of a conductor. Each conductor has a ohmic part, resistance because of ohmic resistance. So there will be a ohmic resistance associated with it. So input impedance will be the ohmic resistance plus the resistance, radiation resistance. So these will constitute the real part, then plus the reactive part. The reason for reactive part we are going to discuss shortly, but then there will be a reactive part in this case. Now this ohmic resistance depends on frequency. It is frequency dependent. So that is the expression for ohmic resistance is given at the bottom. So that is Rs divided by 2 pi A into lambda by 4, where A is the radius of the dipole. Dipole has a length and a radius. Remember this, dipole will always have a length. You cannot have only a length. If you take a rod or a wire, whatever you are taking, any conductor you are taking, a straight conductor will have a length as well as a radius. The radius may be very small, and we expect radius to be very small. So small radius, but there will be a radius. We'll discuss the limit on the radius also. So R ohmic is Rs. Rs is resistivity or resistance of the material that you are using, whether you are using copper, gold, silver, etc. Depending on that, you will get Rs divided by 2 pi A. 2 pi A is the perimeter of the dipole length. Okay, along the length you have L, and in the perimeter in the azimuth you have got 2 pi A extension. That into lambda by 4. Lambda is equal to C by F. That you know. If F is equal to 0, which is DC, then R ohmic will be vanishing. There will be no R ohmic. Otherwise, there will be, so long as there is AC, there will be R ohmic. So ohmic resistance will always be present here. So that plus dipole's radiation resistance forms the input resistance part plus a reactive part. Now in the second line I have written dipole is equal to 70 plus J0 ohm. Why we have written this? That we can do some adjustment in the dipole. That also I am going to discuss. We can do some adjustment in the dipole construction so that this reactive component can vanish. We can make the reactive component equal to 0. Then when we make that adjustment, the resistive component no longer remains 73. It comes down to somewhere between 67 to 70. So approximately people take 68. Sometimes people take 70. I am taking here 70. You can take it 68 or etc. Something like that. So let us look at some of the practical aspects. Okay. So why there is a reactive part? So first let me discuss why there is a reactive part. Once you understand why there is a reactive part, you will understand why or how to remove that reactive part. What we have to do to remove that reactive part. You see on the left hand side, on the top, I have shown a transmission line, a section of a transmission line, right? What we are doing to get the dipole is, we are holding that transmission line at a distance of lambda by 4 from its open end. The transmission line is open-ended. From the open end, we are folding it on both the sides. So it is folded, so that becomes the transmission line, or that becomes the antenna that is embedded in the figure, this plot. Within the plot, this antenna is shown. Look at the middle antenna. The middle one is lambda by 4. So we are folding it by lambda by 4. Now, what we see here is, in the top, we are considering the electric fields are coming from the top to bottom, from plus to negative, minus. Right? Electric fields are distributed that way, and they end at the end of the transmission line, or open end of the transmission line. In fact, that is not a correct assumption. Why it is not a correct assumption? Reason is, at the end point, there will be charge. In the top, there will be positive charge. In the bottom, there will be negative charge. Lines of forces will come from the positive charge towards the negative charge. It will not only be confined within the transmission line, it will fringe out of the transmission line also. There will be lines of forces which are coming away from the transmission line. So it starts in the top plate and ends in the bottom plate, but it is not confined within the transmission line. Like if you take two charges, positive charge and negative charge, and draw their lines of forces, you are not drawing one straight line which connects the positive charge to negative charge. You draw curved lines from the positive charge towards the negative charge. So those curved lines are shown in the next picture of the transmission line. So if I consider those curved lines, which are because of the fringing, these lines are fringing out of the transmission line, or these are called the fringing fields. Fringe fields or the fringing fields, these are fringing out of the transmission line from its open end. So if they are fringing out, we can say that it is not exactly open circuited at the physical open end. It is open circuited at a distance of delta L. If the upper one is L, length is L, then the lower one is L plus delta L at a distance of delta L. The strength of these lines of forces is very small, so they can be neglected after a distance of delta L, and we can say that effectively, electrically, the transmission line extends by an amount of delta L beyond its original length L. So it has the original length L, and it has an open circuit at the end of the original length. At the open circuit, fields are fringing out. To account for the fringing fields, we add another length delta L, which is fictitious length, which is not a physical length, but we expect it to be an electrical length. So L is extended electrically by an amount delta L to take into account the effect of fringing fields. So L becomes L plus delta L. So when we go to the antenna, we have folded lambda by 4 exactly from the open end, physical open end. From that point, we have taken lambda by 4 and folded it. Now, what is the problem with that? We have folded from that. So we know that the input impedance that the transmission line will see is equal to Z0 whole into ZL plus JZ0 tan KL divided by Z0 plus JZL tan KL. Now at the open circuit, ZL is equal to infinity. Open circuit means it is infinity. So at the open end, ZL, which is the load, is because it is open end, it will be open. ZL will be open, which means it is theoretically infinite. To account for that, divide the numerator and denominator by ZL. So that will give you Z0 into 1 plus J Z0 by ZL tan KL divided by Z0 by ZL plus J tan KL. Now as ZL goes to infinity, Z0 by ZL goes to 0. So this becomes, Zin becomes Z0 by J tan KL, which is equal to minus J Z0 cot KL. So Zin is equal to Z0 minus Z0 cot KL. I have done the curve for minus cot KL. Z0 is a constant. So I have drawn the value of cot KL as KL varies from 0 to 180 degrees. Right. Now you can see that up to 90 degree, as KL varies from 0 to 90 degree, this minus cot KL is negative, which means Z in is capacitive in that range. Right. Now it as KL is up to 90 degree, when KL is equal to 90 degree, what will be lambda? KL is 2 pi by lambda, L is 2 pi by lambda into L is equal to 90 degree or pi by 2. 2 pi by lambda into L is equal to pi by 2, which means L is equal to how much? 2 pi by lambda into L is equal to pi by 2. So pi cancels out. L will be lambda by 4. So exactly at lambda by 4, Zin will be 0. Right? And since Zin will be 0, there will be no reactive part. If it is less than lambda by 4, Zin is negative. From this curve you can see. So when the length of the antenna, half wave antenna, is less than lambda by 4, which is the bottom part, in that part Zin is negative. When it is more than lambda by 4, the length of the antenna is more than lambda by 4, then Zin is positive. Positive means it is inductive. Negative means it is capacitive. What we have seen is Zin is equal to 73 plus J 42 point some lambda. So it is inductive. Because of the fringing field, what actually happens is the length, electrical length is extended. And so we do not get a perfect open circuit at the physical end of the antenna, at both the physical ends of the antenna. There is no open circuit. Open circuit is slightly away from that, which means electrical length has increased. So it is no more lambda by 4, it is greater than lambda by 4. Each side is greater than lambda by 4. Because each side is lambda by 4, we are doing a calculation assuming side to be lambda by 4, we are getting into problem. So if we consider that actually it is greater than whatever value we have taken, it is actually slightly more than that, then that indicates this, that there will be a reactive part which is inductive in nature. Because of that, we get the reactive part. To compensate that, what we have to do is slightly, because it is extending, electrically it is extending, it is L plus delta L. So what we can do is, instead of taking L, if I take L minus delta L, then there will be an extension of delta L. So L minus delta L plus delta L because of the fringing field. So total will be L. So now for that L, that will give me, that will take care of the extension due to fringing field and the reactive part or inductive part. So in practice, when you design an antenna, in practice we have to take a slightly shorter length, not lambda by 2 antenna or half wavelength antenna. We have to take an antenna which is about 0.48 or 0.47 lambda instead of 0.5 lambda. So if we do that, then we will get at our desired frequency, the value will be purely resistive. There will be no reactive part. But remember, I am not saying that I will get 73 ohms and no reactive part. I am saying that I will get no reactive part if I take a shorter antenna at the desired frequency. So remember this, that it is at the desired frequency. For the desired frequency or the design frequency, when you are designing a frequency, find out what will be 0. Instead of 0.5 lambda, take 0.48 lambda or 0.47 lambda. Rest of the things we'll discuss later, how once we are over with this. So now let me come to a code which you can use to find out what is the normalized gain, what is the beam solid angle, and what is the CN for a linear antenna. Let me discuss that code. So what I will start with, taking n is equal to 200. You can take 500, 600, 300, 100 as per your choice. I am taking at 200. This is what I am doing by taking this is I am preparing to divide the range 0 to pi. 0 to pi is the range for theta. You know, theta varies between 0 to pi. So I am preparing to divide the range between 0 to pi into n number of angles, n number of small angles. At each angle I will calculate using the computer. So n number of small angles between 0 to pi, that is my m. N can be 200, 100, 600, 800, whatever it is. But for dividing the whole range of theta, I am taking n. Then once I know this, I am having 200 points, 200 angle points. Then I will find out each differential angle. What will be the length of each differential angle, or d theta? Because integration is with respect to theta. Remember, f theta we are finding out by integrating with respect to d theta. So d theta integration is, in practice, in numerical method, integration is replaced by a summation. So d theta will be delta theta. Each delta theta I am representing it as a dTST. TST is for theta, D for delta. So dTST is for delta theta. Delta theta is pi by n, pi upon n. Pi is the maximum value, minimum value is here 0. Otherwise it will be pi minus the minimum value divided by n. Upper limit minus lower limit by n. Lower limit here is 0. Therefore dTh is equal to pi upon n. So this gives me my differential angle. Then I will find out what are the theta at which I am going to calculate. Once I know what is my differential angle, then I'll find out what will be the theta. TST will be 1 to n minus 1. So that is written in MATLAB. It is written as 1 colon n minus 1. That means 1 to n minus 1 in increments of 1. N is an integer. Therefore, 1 to n minus 1 in increments of 1. Suppose n is equal to 5. Then it will be 1 to 5 minus 1 is 4. So 1 to 4. How? 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I am not taking it as 1 to n. We said that we are considering, I am going to consider n angles, but actually I am considering n minus 1 angles here in this line. So TST is equal to 1 to n minus 1 cross into dTh. So that will give me the value of theta at each step. Now why I am doing this? Why I am excluding one value of n? That value is theta is equal to 0. I am going to exclude that. The reason is, in my expression which is going to be integrated, there is a denominator which is a sine square theta term. Sine theta is equal to 0. In the denominator, that will make 0. Denominator is 0 square. So that will give me infinity. So my numerical computation will explode. I will not get any value. That is going to give me an error. I have to take care of that. So I am taking care of that. I am excluding the value theta is equal to 0. Then I write the expression for G. G G is my normalized gain and it depends on theta. So I am writing GTHT, sorry, as a GTH, G theta, so GTH is equal to, now write the expression for that, cos pi L cos theta minus cos pi L divided by sin theta square. Now you can see here for division I am writing dot slash. Dot slash means what we have done up to now, we have found out TST theta. Theta has many values, 1 to n minus 1 values. So for each value, I have to divide that by theta. So it is an element by element division, then element by element squaring. Right. And so dot create 2 is the sine square. Sine square is sin TST dot create 2. Dot create 2 means each theta is squared. Then before that is dot slash. That means each numerator, each value of numerator for each theta value, the numerator is divided by corresponding theta value of the denominator square. So that is how I get GTST, which is the normalized gain. This is the expression for normalized gain. Then what we had done is we had excluded 0 in the theta. Now let me include 0. Why? Because already we have calculated GTST. Now if I include 0, it is not going to affect GTST. So I will include 0 in theta. So now I will do TST is equal to in square bracket 0 comma TST. So this gives me a column matrix in which the column matrix 0 is a 1 plus 1 matrix that is added to a 1 plus n minus 1 matrix. So 0 to TST. Earlier it was 1 to TST, now it becomes 0 to TST. So 0 to n, everything is taken. N equally spaced angles are taken in TST is equal to 0 to TST in square bracket. Now GTST we have calculated. What we will do is we will consider that it is 0 when theta is equal to 0. That also you can put limit for theta and find out that this is 0 when theta is equal to 0. So GTST is equal to 0 comma GTST, that within square bracket, which means we are forming a column matrix in which for theta is equal to 0, GTST is equal to 0 is taken. So GTST is now calculated for all values of theta in the region 0 to pi. Then we know what is the value of Cn. Cn is equal to 1 upon maximum value of GTST. So find out what is the maximum value of GTST. That is what I am doing. So max GTST is a function in MATLAB. Max is a function. So max of a matrix always gives you the maximum value in the matrix, or max of a column gives you the maximum value in a column. Max of a row gives you the maximum value in a row. Now GTST is a column, so max GTST is the maximum value of the column of GTST. So maximum value will be calculated from that. Cn is equal to 1 upon the maximum value. So using that, you find out what is Cn. Now once we know Cn, then we can find out what is the normalized GTST. So find how to do that. GTST is equal to Cn star GTST. Now look at this point. This is Cn star GTST, not dot star. Here we are not multiplying element by element because Cn is only one element, one maximum value. So one element. So it is star GTST. Now we have normalized GTST to its unit value. Then we will find out what is the d omega. So find out d omega using the expression for d omega. Write it in the computer code. It will be 2 star pi. In the MATLAB, pi means pi. It takes the value of pi as 3.141. So don't worry about that. Simply write pi. Wherever you require pi, simply you can write pi. So d omega is equal to 2 star pi star sum of GTST dot star sin TST. Now remember here we are doing a element by element multiplication. So we have GTST dot star. Dot star indicates element by element multiplication. So sum of GTST dot star sin TST whole into star DTST. So that gives me the sum. From the sum integration, what we have done actually is T omega. We have used the integration as summation using DTST, delta TST. Okay. So beam solid angle is found out using this. So this is the code for finding out the beam solid angle. What we have done for the integration, we have used this delta omega or beam solid angle is equal to 2 pi 0 to pi integration g theta sin theta d theta. That we have written for the integration. We have written this is approximated as 2 pi. You can see in the previous slide we started with 2 star pi, then we used the function sum. Here it is summation I is equal to 0 to n minus 1. So 0 to n minus 1 means there are n number of terms. 1 to n minus 1 means there are n minus 1 number of terms. 0 to n minus 1 is n number of terms. All terms we are considering. I is equal to 0 to n minus 1. G theta I sin theta I delta theta. That is what we have written in the previous slides. Now delta theta, you know what we have used for delta theta, pi by n. Theta I is equal to I into delta theta in this expression, and I goes from 0 to n minus 1 in this summation or in this approximation that we have used. Instead of using this approximation, which is a very simple or crude approximation, you can also use Gauss-Legendre quadrature. That integration, that also gives you more accurate result. So for that you can write WTH is equal to QUADRS. That is the integration function in MATLAB. So you are writing the integration function. Within that you are writing 0, pi by 2, pi 32. This means use a 32 points in the sub-intervals of 0 by pi by 0 to pi by 2 and pi by 2 to pi. So this means this. So using that you can find out or you can integrate. So the integral can be calculated using this. Once this is done, the integration is done, then you can write d omega is equal to Cn star 2 star pi, so as it is first part, then W dash, which is the transpose of W that has been calculated, star GLTH dot star sin TH. GLTH gives you the expression or a function for the gain, not the normalized gain. This is for the gain. Using this, you can find out delta omega as 7.6581 when L is equal to lambda by 2 or 0.5. So this is for the code or the explanation of the code. Now let me see a simulation of a half-wave dipole antenna. On the left side you can see the half-wave dipole antenna. I am designing, or my aim is to design a half-wave dipole antenna for the GSM 900 band. Right? I will take about 937.5 as my frequency. So accordingly, if I calculate my lambda by 2, becomes 160 millimeter, or lambda by 4 is equal to 80 millimeter. So you can see on the left side, this design is for 80 millimeter. It is oriented, the antenna axis is along the Z axis. That is why I have inset, given the inset as Z axis. This is done using CST Microwave Studio. Much earlier, this was done much earlier, just using CST Microwave Studio. So this gives you a dipole antenna. And on the right hand side, we see the current variation over a large frequency band at with different points of time. So time, as time varies, how the current varies, that current variation over the antenna, you can see it goes to maximum, then goes to zero, again goes to maximum, goes to zero at both the ends. So it becomes positive, then negative, then positive. That continues as we had discussed earlier for a dipole antenna. Same phenomenon continues here. So it is going to radiate. So that is confirmed from the surface current, starting with the surface current. Now let me see what will be the current distribution at different points of time. So if capital T is the period, time period. So when capital T is equal to 0, and this left hand side shows you the current distribution maximum. So I start at maximum when phase is equal to 0. Then when the phase becomes 90, the current becomes minimum, that is the right hand side. Right. Then if I go to 180, the phase again becomes maximum but in the opposite direction, which means if the left arm was negative, right arm was positive, now the left arm is positive, right arm is negative. Then as I go to 270, then it becomes again minimum. Then as I go to again 370, 360 or 0, which is 0, again this will flip, the maxima minima will flip. So this is how the current distribution along the dipole will behave or will occur. Now with these current distributions, we have fed the dipole. Let us see what will be the impedance, input impedance over a broad frequency range. I am seeing the input impedance. It is from about 1 gigahertz to 10 gigahertz, slightly less than 1 gigahertz to 10 gigahertz. Remember, I told you I am considering GSM 900 band, which is from 860, 830 to 960, right? 830 megahertz to 960 megahertz. Now, when I did this simulation, I found that on the S parameter becomes less than 10 if I am at 3 gigahertz or more. So, which means my design is not perfect, right? So this I can see also in the using the Smith chart. So look at the Smith chart. What happens here? In the Smith chart, you can see the points that I am showing, 1 and 2. They are close to the resistance axis, but they are not exactly on the resistance. This gives me very undesirable design. I am not interested in this type of design. So I will do some other tricks. Let me see what happens to the real part and imaginary part. So look at the real part and imaginary part. If you look at the real part and imaginary part, you will see that the imaginary part becomes 0 at around 2.24, and the peak for real part is at around 2.69. I didn't require that. So what I will do is I will go back to my original thing. I'll see that if I consider my GSM band, what is going to happen? So let me look at the impedance in the GSM band. Okay, so here in this GSM band, I am looking at the impedance from 0.7 to 1. So everything is taken care of. 830 to 960 is taken care of, right? And you see the S parameter here. The peak is at a point which is about 0.8, 0.8074. That is where I am getting the peak instead of getting at 0.9375. I am getting at 0.874. Don't worry about that, but I am getting it there. Then I have got a reasonable bandwidth from 0.7 to 0.86. So it is a reasonable bandwidth if I am operating within this band. So it is reasonable. More than 0.3 is already there. So that band I am looking at. Like I have to design an antenna by shifting this upward. How to do that, that I am going to tell you now. And now look at the Smith chart. If you look at the Smith chart, you can see that the peak in the S parameter corresponds to a point on the Smith chart plot which is inductive, which is in the upper half of the Smith chart, which is inductive, right? This I have already told you in our previous discussion that it is going to be inductive. The input impedance is going to be inductive because of the fringing field. So I have got an inductive one. My job is to bring that down to make it resistive, purely resistive. Alright. Now if I bring it more downward, then it will become capacitive. If I go upward in frequency, it will become more inductive. If I go downward in frequency, it will become capacitive. So what I will do is I will come slightly downward in frequency and find out where is my point, where is my resonant point. So let me see the resonant point. To see the resonant point, either I can use the Smith chart or I can find out the real and imaginary part of the impedance. Now, if I look at the imaginary part, real and imaginary part of the impedance, I see that the imaginary part becomes zero. Imaginary part is shown by dashed line. The imaginary part becomes zero at 0.79216 gigahertz, whereas my real part gives me a value of 73 ohm at 0.8347. I require my imaginary part to be 0 at 0.8347. Now, see what is the difference between them in terms of lambda. 19 point. So there is a difference of 19.30 millimeter in the length. If I reduce my length by 19.30, instead of taking 80, if I take it to be 19.30, reduce it by 19.30, then I will get this value. How to get that? That is simply by multiplying my lambda by, instead of by multiplying lambda with 0.47 or 48. Instead of taking 0.5 lambda, If I take 0.47 lambda or 0.48 lambda, it will be reduced by 19.37. So how I got that value? It's very simple. I used a simple technique. I found out what is the value or what is the frequency for 73 ohms for real part. So that is 0.8. And I found out what is it for what is when it is 0 for imaginary part. That is 0.7. Frequencies, from the two frequencies I will find out. Physical antenna, if it is a physical antenna, it has a diameter or it has a perimeter. So current is not along the length or is not along a single line. It is distributed along a line as well as the perimeter, right? So total current length is not lambda by 4 on each arm. It is not lambda by 4, or total will be not lambda by 2. It will be actually lambda by 2 plus pi d or d. You can take it as d. Pi d you can take approximately as. So always design it as lambda by length plus d, length of the antenna or length of the conductor plus diameter of the conductor should be approximately equal to 0.47 lambda or 0.48 lambda. This is the thumb rule or design rule that you should use when you are designing a dipole antenna, half wave dipole antenna. I think I am clear up to this. Now only one point I have left. How large can be your A? A should be such that there should not be any variation, sinusoidal variation or variation along the perimeter, variation of the current along the perimeter. So the perimeter should be always less than lambda by 10. So A has to be pi into A has to be less than lambda by 10, or you can say A has to be less than lambda by 10. That will also be fine. So always take it that. So upper limit on A is lambda by 10. So A should not be more than lambda by 10. Otherwise, there may be variation along the perimeter that makes things complicated. Calculations will become complicated. We do not want to get into those parts. Second is when you are designing an antenna, usually the weight of the antenna matters. Where you are going to mount the antenna, if antenna is heavy, it will be problem. So instead of having a solid antenna or a solid length of wire, take a hollow wire. Instead of a solid wire, take a hollow wire or a hollow conductor, right? Or if the diameter, if you are at very low frequency, lower frequency, then the diameter you can take larger. In those cases, over the whole diameter, put grids of wires. So instead of taking a large solid diametric cylinder, take grids. Now, why that is possible? Because of skin length. You know, there is something called skin depth at SC. The field penetration is up to the skin depth. Beyond skin depth, it is negligible. So long as you are taking a hollow cylinder whose thickness is more than the skin depth, then there is no problem. So we can take that type of hollow cylinders. So this is about impedance. Now let us look at the pattern for different wavelengths or different lengths. Length is I have fixed it as 160. Each side is 80 millimeter, so it is 160 millimeter. Now I am seeing the radiation pattern for different lengths. So we are starting at f is equal to 0.9375, which is lambda by 2. Now you can see the 3D pattern, and in the 3D pattern, you can see that if I take a cut, this red zone gives you a figure of 8. Otherwise, in the green zone, there is no radiation. So along here, there is no radiation. In the XY plane, you can clearly see the figure of 8, and complete 3D pattern you can see. Now in this, the things to note here is at this 0.5 lambda, which is lambda by 2, if I take it to be lambda by 2, radiation efficiency in this case is 0.003 dB. Total efficiency is minus 0.88 dB or minus 0.89 dB. Gain is important. Gain is 2.02 for a lambda by 2 antenna. Similarly, if I go for a 0.75 lambda or 3 by 4 L lambda, 3 by 4 lambda antenna, you see the second pattern, which is at the right hand corner. Its 2D pattern is shown above. The 2D pattern is slightly narrower compared to the 2D pattern of the previous antenna or lambda by 2 antenna. This you can see from the 3D cut in the 3D plane. Both the cuts show you this clearly. The cut in the 3 by 4 lambda is narrower, figure of 8, but it is narrower compared to the lambda by 2 antenna, half wave dipole antenna, which means this is more directive. If it is more directive, the second one, as I increase the length, it becomes more directive. So that is one thing that we saw now. Right now, this we had discussed tentatively in the last class. This class I am showing you the simulated results. The next one is if it is 1 lambda, whole lambda length is equal to lambda, then the topmost. Again, it becomes more narrower, gain is slightly increased. Now look at the next one, 1.25 lambda. As I told you, here the gain is maximum, 4.281 dBi. Again we get, then upper one, the side lobes are coming up. You can see the green portions are the side lobes, red portions are the main lobes. Main lobes are again in the azimuth plane, side lobes are coming up, but side lobes are very small, negligible power goes there, so it is more efficient, or it gives you higher directivity and gain. So then we'll come to the next two antennas, which is 1.5 lambda and 1.75 lambda. So the uppermost is 1.5 lambda, lower one is 1.75 lambda. You can see the pattern is completely lost. There is nothing in the XY plane, or in the azimuth plane, there is nothing, so you have lost the complete pattern. Pattern is no more omnidirectional, so omnidirectionality is gone. That is the thing that is gone. Figure of 8 is gone. We are getting more side lobes which are merging. Now what does this mean? This means that we cannot extend the length, or we cannot go up in the frequency or down in the frequency as per our choice. The choice is between lambda by 5 to 1.25 lambda. So always design depending on them, and avoid the higher order modes. With this note, I will conclude the discussion on half wave dipole antenna. If there is any question, or if you have any doubts, I'll be happy to answer those things.